So I spent pretty much most of the holiday season replaying Baldur's Gate 3 in preparation for the latest update, and now that I've clocked in what I would say is a modest amount of hours, I decided to compile everything I know into the ultimate tips and tricks video. I'll split this up into various sections from beginner, intermediate, and advanced to even categorizing the tips, so hopefully everyone can at least pick up some new knowledge by the end of the video. Here are the timestamps for each of the categories, and without further ado, let's dive into the beginner tips. Starting with tip number 1, watch the introductions for the origin characters. I'm starting the tips literally right from the very beginning. For these super early tips, I'm assuming that you're a completely new player and the goal is for you to have the least confusing start. Anyway, if that new player is you, be sure to not make the same mistakes I did and completely miss these buttons in the character creation screen. These are basically introductions to the core characters of Baldur's Gate 3 and it'll give you a good amount of context as to who they are and what they're about. Number 2, keep your stats at even numbers. Now, this is not a hard rule, but the thing with Baldur's Gate 3 is that your ability modifiers, for example your +1 strength, only gets additional pluses at even numbers. To be exact, ability scores 8 to 9 gives you -1, 10 to 11 gives you +0, 12 to 13 gives you +1, and so on and so forth. The reason why I say it's not a hard rule is because later on there are ways to get +1s through quests or feats when you're leveling, but you'd have to know where to get them. As a beginner, it's generally good practice to try to keep these at an even number so you won't have any wasted stats. And so you won't worry, you can always respec later in the game when you meet a guy called Withers. Now that you have your character, and let's say you started your journey and you're on board the Nautiloid, there's something here that a lot of players still miss to this day, and that is tip number 3, get the Everburn Blade. There's 2 ways to get this. One is to defeat Commander Zolk once you reach the Helm, which is what I did back in the day, but the easier way to do this is number 1, you have to rescue Shadowheart. Number 2 is to press K on the keyboard to access the spellbook and put the spell command on your prepared list of spells before you fight Zolk. Once combat starts, just have Shadowheart command him to drop his weapon, get somebody to pick it up, and you just skip a difficult early boss fight while getting a really good early game two-handed greatsword. Lastly, to have the best first experience in BG3, before we move forward to the combat section, number 4, don't miss your core companions. I discussed this in my last video, but I might as well add it here too. All of your companions can be found around the crash site, so explore the area thoroughly and you'll be able to find all of your companions. If you missed anyone, here are their exact locations. Shadowheart is lying down just in front of you as soon as you land, so she's pretty easy to find. Astarion can be found at the west side of the crash, just left of the dying Mind Flayer. Gale is at the opposite side to the east inside this magical anomaly on the side of the cliff, and Lae'zel is just north of that near the chapel. Will is inside the grove training the tieflings, and his questline will lead you to Karlach via a quest marker. So now you're in the game. You've done the intro, you've got your companions, and you have a decent starting weapon. I think this is the perfect time to get into some combat tips so you're not dying to goblin booyags or overly aggressive frogs. So for number 5, always apply advantages on your enemies while avoiding disadvantages. This is by far the most important combat tip you should know. It's the reason why your Shadowheart keeps missing her fireballs. How it works is that every time you apply a condition like off balance or prone, aside from the debuffs your enemy gets, you'll also increase your likelihood of hitting. Attacks with advantages roll 2 dice and use the higher roll, which means you have a higher chance to hit and also a higher chance to crit. On the other hand, if the enemy applies a disadvantage on you, not only do you get the negative condition, but you also roll at a disadvantage when attacking them. 2 dice and you use the lower roll. Number 6, always take the high ground. Being at a higher elevation gives you a +2 bonus to your attack roll, and being lower gives you a -2 penalty. It's especially crucial for your ranged characters so they can easily hit their shots, and also so they can avoid getting hit as they are usually the squishiest. An easy way to gain height is to either utilize the terrain or to stack boxes together and climb on top. Since we're talking about terrain already, number 7, utilize your environment. Baldur's Gate 3 is one of few games that gives you the freedom to tackle encounters the way you want to. That means that not only does it let you do almost anything you want, but it also rewards your creativity. Shoot flammable liquids to make them explode, throw exploding barrels at your enemies, shove them off cliffs, or bait them with illusions. Sometimes there are even things you can destroy around the area to deal loads of damage which might not be immediately obvious at first glance. Be creative. Always survey your environment and you might just be rewarded with funny and interesting ways of fighting your enemies. Number 8, don't just mindlessly follow the turn order. Okay, this is a simple tip many overlook when starting Baldur's Gate 3. During combat, the turn order is displayed at the top of your screen. If your character's turns are next to each other, you can click their portraits to switch and act in the order that you want. The best way to use this is by setting up disadvantages first before dealing your big boy damages. For example, have Gale cast Hold Person for CC, shoot a Guiding Bolt with Shadowheart for advantage on the next attack, then Stealth Astarion for a massive damage with his sneak attack. Plan your turns wisely and you'll master combat in no time. Oh, and if you accidentally ended a turn, number 9, you can cancel the end turn if the next batch of turns haven't started yet. Perfect for situations where you realize late that you actually have movement left and would like to reposition, or if you have a bonus action that you forgot to use. Number 10. Have you ever accidentally shot a teammate because they were on top of the enemy? Well, you can easily avoid that problem by attacking the enemy's portrait directly. You can also do the same for your party members when applying healing or buff so you don't accidentally waste your resources. Number 11. Dip your weapons to boost damage. This is an action I didn't use at all during my first playthrough just because I forgot it even existed. But basically, when you're near a surface, like for example an acidic surface, or even if something's on fire, you can dip your weapons for extra damage. You can do this on candles, drop torches, even burning enemies or allies. Number 12. You can attack mid-dialogue. There's an also well-known feature in BG3 when you're having a conversation with someone. At the bottom left of your screen, there should be a button to switch characters, and depending on if the character is not part of the cutscene, you can actually move them around while your other characters is having the conversation. This allows you the opportunity to either pickpocket, position your characters ahead of time if there's going to be a battle, or get a surprise attack. Number 13. You can throw potions to apply its effects on multiple party members. Bunch up your characters and simply throw the healing potion on the ground. You can also do this for buffs like speed potions, and you can do this to revive fallen companions as long as they haven't failed their death saving throw. Sometimes it can get wonky though, so for tip number 14, press the O button to get a top-down view of the entire battlefield. This will not only let you see the exact range of spells or potions, but will also allow you to see enemies that are at a higher elevation. Number 15. You can knock enemies unconscious if you don't want to kill them. If you accidentally aggro a friendly NPC, or you want to recruit a certain ally, which we'll get into later on in the video, you can toggle this button at the passive section of the hotbar, and as long as you don't land a spell as the last hit, instead of being dead, they will just be knocked out. Speaking of the hotbar, you can fully customize the hotbar to your liking. Not only can you change its size by clicking this plus/minus button at the right side, but if you unlock it, you can freely move stuff around to reposition your skills and abilities to exactly how you want them to be. If you find yourself using an ability more often than the rest, you can also create a custom tab and bind those abilities to your number key so you can easily activate them without needing to click on the ability manually, which helps a ton to speed up your combat. Number 17. Use your familiar to scout ahead without triggering cutscenes. If you want to see what you're coming up against but don't want to risk aggroing unnecessary enemies with your party, call your familiar and have it walk around so you know what to prepare for ahead of time. Number 18. Take long rests often. The reason for this is because number 1, it's the best way to replenish your health and combat resources. And number 2, it also progresses the story of your companions. These interactions mostly happen at camp, and if you limit the amount of long rests you take, you might actually miss a good amount of these conversations, which are not only interesting, but sometimes even crucial to understanding the characters. Lastly, for beginner combat, number 19. The Examine key, or T, is OP. It's a feature that allows you to get the description of whatever it is you're hovering on. You can use this for items to see their value or effects without needing to pick them up, but more importantly, in combat, if you press T on an enemy, you see exactly what their stats are, like armor class, resistances, and vulnerabilities. However, by far its biggest advantage is if you're new to the game and unsure what certain conditions or terms mean, the Examine key gives exact descriptions. And you can even examine within examined windows to get your knowledge up to speed. So that's the beginner combat tips. You should now have a great foundation to explore Baldur's Gate 3's combat system for yourself and have fun. We'll revisit combat in the intermediate section, but for now let's move on to more general advice for beginners. Let's talk about hotkeys. It's one of those things that don't really seem important, but once you actually master them, playing the game feels completely different. And by far the most important hotkey of all is number 20. Use your left alt to see lootable items. I recently introduced my sister to the game and I was tweaking because she was missing the most obvious things and I realized she wasn't using her left alt at all. Number 21. Using the common movement hotkeys can speed up your game. The common hotkeys are Z for jumping, X for throwing, V for shoving, and C for crouch. There's also group crouch for party sneaks if you press Shift plus C, and then G will group and ungroup your party, which is used for positioning, scouting, or checking for traps. Number 22. Pressing Shift plus space puts you in turn-based mode. That's right, turn-based mode is not just for combat. You can activate it anytime, anywhere, but for me, I mostly use it when navigating traps, sneaking, or pickpocketing certain NPCs. And then there's the save scummer's favorite hotkeys. Number 23, F5 to quick save, and F8 to quick reload. Number 24, press the tilde key to toggle highlights. And number 25, learn how to control your camera. This falls in the hotkey section because of centering, but just to give you the basics, you can move it around with WASD, but if you want to center your camera to your character again, you'd have to double click on the portrait, which was annoying the first time I played. The easiest way to center your camera is to press the F1, F2, F3, and F4 keys, which center the camera on each of your party members. So that's enough for hotkeys. Before we finish up the beginner section of the video, I want to discuss inventory management. Just because it's one of those things that you're constantly going to be engaging with throughout your whole playthrough, so it's better to understand the best practices in the early hours so you can have a clean inventory right from the get-go. The best way to have a clean inventory is to not let it clutter in the first place. So for number 26, whenever you're picking up items that you know you'll sell, right-click the item and click Pick Up and Add to Wares. Items in your inventory that have been added as wares will be tagged as sellables, and when you go to the vendor screen, you can just easily click the Sell All Wares button. Number 27, send all of your food to camp. Carrying food in your backpack is plainly just a waste of carry weight because long resting picks from all inventories, including camp inventories. Number 28, you can easily transfer items across the party by utilizing the Send Items button or by simply dragging them to your companion's portraits. Number 29, instead of moving items one by one, press Shift plus click to select rows and Control click to select multiple items. You can then drag these around to easily move them in your inventory. Number 30, use pouches and backpacks to organize your items. This is my personal preference, but how I do it is that I have designated pouches and backpacks for specific types of items. For example, I have a backpack for my scrolls, a pouch for my consumables, another backpack for throwables, and another pouch for my most commonly used magical items such as necklaces and rings. But what do you do when you still can't find that one scroll or consumable that you know you have but just forgot who it ended up with? Well, number 31, use the search function at the tab window. When you press tab on your keyboard, the game brings up all your party inventory at the same time. You can freely move stuff around here even in the middle of combat, but the most important feature here is the search bar. I often misplace certain items, so just by typing their name here, I can easily find the items that I need and send them to the party members that need them. Now, before we move forward to the intermediate tips, I'd like to do some rapid fire ones for some of the tips I couldn't fit into the other categories. Number 32, speak to everyone and everything. This includes not just the people that you encounter in your adventures, but also animals and even corpses. It's not only fun for the story and world building aspect, but it can give you alternate ways to solve and deal with certain quests. Additionally, once you cast Speak to the Dead once, it's gonna last until long rest, and an easy way to tell if a corpse will respond to your questions is if they glow white while the spell is active. Number 33. Some spells that you cast can be reactivated again and again in the cantrip slot. A great example of this is the Speak to the Dead spell, which we just talked about, but also something like Witch Bolt. Number 34. You can see the exact weapons and armors your characters are proficient at in the character sheet. Press tab, go to character sheet, and hover in this area right here, and the game will show you exactly which types of weapons your characters are able to maximize the use of. Number 35. Cast until long rest spells every time you finish camping. This is more of a best practice, but spells like Long Strider or Aid last until the next time you long rest, so it's beneficial to have them every time you start your day. Other examples of long rest spells I like to use are Mage Armor, Warding Bond, Hero's Feast, and I'll even throw in summons just so you won't have to spend actions when you do find yourself in combat situations. Number 36. Fast travel is available at any time without cost. You don't have to fight your way out of the goblin camp if you decide to raid its denizens. Simply teleport to a different location and you're out. Number 37, equip a torch on every one of your party members. Incredibly useful in low light areas of course, but also really easy to swap to by just clicking this button in your hotbar. Number 38, how to properly use boxes, crates, and barrels to your advantage. We kind of tackled this earlier when I talked about stacking boxes to gain high ground bonus, but there's actually a lot of ways to utilize these if you just get creative with it. For example, you can create choke points by building barricades, block ladders to prevent enemies from reaching your position, create steps to climb on, and even block vents to avoid traps completely. Number 39. Pay attention to the text color while you're pressing the Alt key. I know this is happening a lot for beginners, but if a loot's text is red, that means picking it up is considered stealing and can land you in a confrontation if caught. White texts are free to be taken, and yellow means that it's most likely quest related. Number 40. Some roles can be repeated by switching to other characters. This is not always the case, especially for story-related dialogue, but occasionally there are dialogues that allow you to try again simply by triggering the check as another character in your party. Keep it in mind as it can save you inspiration points. Speaking of inspiration points, number 41, inspiration points are capped at 4. If you're not aware, inspiration points lets you reroll failed ability checks. They're pretty easy to earn as long as you play according to your background, but early on, I made the mistake of hoarding them for important checks, not realizing you can't hold more than 4. Number 42. Pick up the first shovel you find. Whenever you're exploring in the world, occasionally you'll randomly roll survival checks, which if you succeed, you'll be able to see a mound you can use the shovel on to get some free loot. However, if you do end up failing the check, you can still use the shovel and try to dig around the general area to still find the buried treasure chest. Number 43. You still gain XP when you solve encounters through dialogue. You don't have to purposefully get yourself in combat situations in order to level up. However, it is beneficial to explore every corner of the map as XP can come from discovery, dialogue, or puzzles. Number 44. Don't waste your lockpicks on wooden chests. These chests have low durability. You can easily get its contents by smacking it. Number 45. Turn off nearby light sources when you're trying to sneak. This is a little bit situational, but even being lightly obscured is better than being in direct light when it comes to stealth checks. To check the light level of an area, press shift and look at the icon. Additionally, number 46. Press shift to reveal line of sight. And this is incredibly useful for anything sneaking related, or even when you're trying to see if it's safe to pickpocket someone. In some cases, it can even help you avoid ambushes, especially in Act 2. Number 47. Pay attention to your minimap as it can reveal hidden areas or illusions. An example of this is in the Zentarim hideout, where there's a certain wall that you can walk through if you notice that the minimap continues despite there being a wall. Number 48. Always bring a bludgeoning weapon. Like illusory walls, you should also keep an eye out for cracked walls. If you hover on a suspicious wall, you'll be able to tell if it's something you can destroy, and since these walls are completely resistant to slashing and highly resistant to piercing, bludgeoning weapons are the best way to take them down. Number 49. Press right-click on your mouse to cancel movement commands. It might not seem useful at first, but I've lost count of how many times I've spotted traps only for a party member to walk right into them. Save yourself the headache. If you pass a perception check or if you feel like one of your characters is about to do something stupid, right-click and stop them before anything happens. Number 50. Hoard alchemical ingredients. You'll find tons of alchemical ingredients in your travels, and after 20 hours, collecting them gets tedious. So most people just ignore them. I kinda did the same because I didn't have the potion recipes unlocked, which was a big mistake. Potions are insanely OP, and having a steady supply makes fights significantly easier. If you're stupid like me and missed this, press H to open the alchemy window. At the bottom, there's an extract all ingredients button, and if you click it, you'll instantly unlock recipes for some of the best potions in the game. That's it for the beginner tips. These should carry you through your first playthrough. Before moving forward, I'd like to first thank the sponsor of this video, Gamivo.com. Do you want cheaper games? Little low on the gaming budget because you got bills to pay? Well, I've got you covered. Gamivo is an online platform for gamers where you can get your favorite games at the best prices. They've got a huge selection for all of the major platforms, and not only that, but aside from cheaper games, they've kindly prepared a 5% discount code for the viewers of the channel. That's right, if you head to the link down below in the pinned comment or the description of this video, it'll direct you straight to their website. Pick any game you want, and on the checkout page, make sure to type in code KAGANATH to take advantage of the 5% off. In addition, if you want exclusive daily or monthly discounts and VIP access to a 24/7 live chat with their support team, go ahead and sign up for Gamivo Smart. It comes with everything I mentioned, plus pre-order priority and a free customer protection program. All of that for only $1.08 a month. They're also verified in Trustpilot, having amazing reviews, so you'll know that your purchases are protected. So if you want to get your favorite games at discounted prices and support this channel at the same time, head on over there with the link down below and make sure not to miss out on the 5% discount with code KAGANATH. Let's get back to the video. Moving on to the intermediate section, we're going to be talking about tips that are a little more advanced and require some understanding of how the game works. Starting with the intermediate combat tips, number 51. Maximize the use of your hirelings. Aside from using them as backup in case some of your party members leave you for slaughtering innocent tieflings, the best reason to use hirelings is actually because of their customizability. For example, you can turn one of your hirelings into a daily buffer so you won't have to spend spell slots every time you start a new day. Another example is to create a hireling specifically for crafting potions. The best way to do this is by hiring Brenna Brightsong, who is a halfling, for her racial passive, which prevents her from failing rolls. We then level up her wisdom to increase her chances when crafting potions, and then we also give her the medicine proficiency before respeccing her into a transmutation wizard for the passive experimental alchemy. This basically allows her to craft 2 potions for the price of 1 as long as you succeed a difficulty 15 medicine check. Number 52. Pick up corpses and send them to your camp inventory. Whether you're a necromancer or not, there's a lot of ways in the game to get the animate undead spell, and having a summon ready before combat starts is always better than wasting an action to call for a summon. And speaking of summons, number 53. Summons are incredibly OP in this game, and you can stack them. Summons have trivialized some of the hardest parts of this game for me, so if you're struggling with certain encounters, House of Grief, bring a little army. 54. There's a hidden subclass for paladins called the Oathbreaker if you break your oath. This is pretty well known, but I didn't want to mention it in the beginner section because it's a spoiler. But if you missed this somehow, then it's a way for your paladins to abandon their oath and gain new, edgier abilities. Number 55. Pick up all the smoke powder, oil, and fire wine barrels you come across and send them to camp. You already know where I'm going with this. There's really only one use for these types of barrels, and even if you're not the type of player to mess around and explode a whole boss area, it's still incredibly handy to have the option to do so if the need arises. Number 56. The backpack nuke strategy. This is similar to the last tip, but on a much more controlled scale. If you put all of your throwables in one backpack, throw it at an enemy, it should break the backpack, putting all of your throwables on the ground ready to be exploded by a well-aimed fire arrow. Number 57. You can turn reactions on and off. Assuming you already know what reactions are since we are in the intermediate section of the video already, you can actually turn them on or off and even set them to pause the game and ask you if you want to use them in certain moments. Now, why is this useful? For example, the Luck of the Far Realms reaction, which allows you to change a successful attack roll to a guaranteed critical hit, should not be activated when an enemy is still immune or has their shield up. Number 58. Try to start encounters with a surprise attack as much as you can. This is because if you're able to apply the surprise condition at the start of an encounter, your enemies will miss their first turn. To do this, you basically just attack an enemy from a stealth position. Number 59. Always switch to your melee weapon at the end of your turn. This is because opportunity attacks, which are the attacks your character automatically do if an enemy moves away from their range, don't get activated if you're holding a ranged weapon. Number 60. You can dual wield hand crossbows. I'm not even talking about the famed double crossbow builds, which are insanely powerful, but this is more so if you have a character that constantly is wasting their bonus action. Equip them with a double hand crossbow so you're at least outputting some damage with their bonus action instead of none at all. Number 61. Stop equipping heavy armor on your barbarians. I see this a lot, but heavy armor actually removes the advantages you get when you activate rage as a barbarian. Stop doing it. Barbarians have the unarmored defense passive for a reason. Also, pay attention to the armor type of your helmets and boots, because if they count as light or even medium armor, then your unarmored defense passive will not activate. Number 62, you can multi-class in Baldur's Gate 3, however, it requires pre-existing knowledge of what the classes do, which is why I put it in the intermediate section. One of my favorites is what I'm currently using, which is Rogue Fighter. This combo lets my character attack tons of times per turn thanks to the fighter's extra attack, action surge, and the thief's double bonus action. Another popular example is the Paladin Warlock, which gives your Paladin Warlock spell slots for rechargeable smites, plus the charisma scaling benefits both classes. You get your smites, Eldritch Blast, and you work great as the party's face with the high charisma stat. For beginners, I recommend following a build guide as it can get quite complicated, but once you're comfortable, feel free to experiment and have fun. To finish up on the intermediate combat tips, number 63, get your additional companions if you miss them. So now we're moving towards spoiler territory. I'm going to be talking about stuff that you might have missed in Acts 1, 2, and 3 moving forward, so just keep that in mind. Earlier we talked about the core companions, but let's see if you missed any extras. Halsin is the earliest one. You can recruit him in Act 2 if you rescued him from the Goblin Camp. Minthara can also join in Act 2, but only if you raid the Grove in an evil playthrough. If you want her in a good playthrough, don't kill her in Act 1. Instead, use the non-lethal passive to knock her out. You will then find her in both cases at Moonrise Towers to be recruited. Jaheira fights alongside you in the Moonrise Siege, and if she survives, she officially joins in Act 3. And finally, Minsk and Boo. Just follow Jaheira's quest in Act 3, and as long as you don't kill them at the end, they'll join you in camp. Now let's do some intermediate tips for things you might have missed in your playthroughs for each of the acts. Starting with Act 1, number 64. Make sure to rescue Us for an additional summon. Us is the intellect devourer that you meet immediately after starting the game. Most people just crush Us, but if you rescue it, it'll help you in the Nautiloid and can permanently be part of your party once you make it to the morgue in the Mind Flayer colony in Act 2 through the Summon Us ability. Number 65, get your free musical proficiency. You don't actually have to be a bard or waste a feat in order to gain musical proficiency. Talk to Alfira and perform with her, and if you succeed the dialogue checks, your character will be able to play instruments and distract NPCs even if it wasn't part of their abilities in the character creation. Number 66, get a permanent sea invisibility buff by undergoing Volo surgery. A lot of people tend to not go through with this since he is literally going to perform a lobotomy on your character, but if you end up just taking everything, you are going to be rewarded with Volo's Ersatz Eye, which permanently allows you to see enemies who turn invisible. Number 67, consider taking the Hag's Deal. No, I'm not talking about giving her your eye, which is terrible. I'm talking about taking the Hag's Hair, which will give you a +1 bonus to any stat of your choice. To get this, you would have to go through the Hag's Lair, and then once you get to the fight where Mayrina is trapped in the cage, get Auntie Ethel to about 30% health and just end turn. She will then initiate a conversation mid-combat, asking you to spare her in exchange for some power. Number 68, don't miss out on Scratch. Scratch can be encountered near the Owlbear Cave to the west of the Grove. If you pick the dialogue option to invite him to camp, after a few long rests, you'll receive an item called Scratch's Ball, which grants the Summon Scratch ability as long as you keep it in your inventory. Number 69. Don't miss out on Shovel. Like Best Boy Scratch, Shovel is also a summonable NPC, but getting her is a bit trickier, so here's how it works. Her summon scroll is inside one of the coffins in the apothecary's basement at the Blighted Village. Just head down the hatch, pull the lever, and you'll find the Scroll of Summon Quasit. A simple way to get the ability is to learn it as a wizard, but if you're not a wizard, here's what you do. Just go to the room behind the mirror, summon Shovel, and follow these dialogue choices. After that, talk to her again, and if she calls you Spellshite, you did it right. Keep in mind that only wizards, warlocks, or sorcerers can do this, so if you're not playing one, just have Gil do the summoning. Number 70. Get the Necromancy of Thay. The same room we're currently in is also where you can find the Necromancy of Thay, which can give really great buffs if you can succeed in its dialogue checks. To open it, you'll need the Dark Amethyst, which can be found either by going down the well in the Blighted Village or breaking a wall in the Blacksmith's Forge. The Dark Amethyst will be at the nest of the Face Spider Matriarch. Succeeding the dialogue checks will reward you with an unlimited Speak to the Dead spell, and you'll also permanently gain the Forbidden Knowledge passive, which increases wisdom saving throws and ability checks by +1. But this is just the first part of the secrets of this book. Later on in the Act 3 section, I'll show you how to gain its full power. Number 71, you can clean yourself with a sponge tray, soap, or even by just getting the wet status. This is perfect for if you ever find yourself in a situation where you had to dip your face on warg poo or get through a security checkpoint manned by a ghoul. Since we're in the goblin camp, let's talk about everything you can get here. Tip number 72, here's how to maximize your time in the goblin camp. Starting with buffs, one is available right as you enter Soluna's temple. While most people would decline Priestess Gut's branding offer, accepting it lets you use equipment requiring the brand of the Absolute, some of which are great early game items. Next is Leviathar's Love, which is not a permanent buff but it will persist until death. So technically, if you just don't die, this can last you the whole game. Talk to Abdurak, endure his ritual, and pass 3 dialogue checks to get it. You already know about Minthara, but make sure to grab the Illithid Parasites from Priestess Gut and Dror Ragzlin if you're going to be using Illithid powers. Also, free the Priest of Maglubiet for free Shadowheart inspiration points, and I personally almost always clear the whole Goblin camp to rescue the Owlbear Cub, who will later join you at camp. Number 73, be aware of the Underdark shortcuts. If you ever want to get Underdark items without going to the Goblin camp, here are your options. The first entrance is in the Face Spider boss fight. Cast Featherfall and jump into the massive hole and you'll find yourself near the Myconid colony. Second one is in the Zentarim hideout and Walk-in's Rest. The illusory wall near their stash contains a lift that will take you down. Lastly, in the Hag's Lair, in the Noxious Fumes trap area, wear a Whispering Mask to open a hidden gnarled door which leads down into the Underdark. Now that we've made it down, here's what you might have missed in the Underdark. Number 74, this is how to rescue Balin easily while being able to use the Noble Stock twice. First, let's talk about rescuing Balin. There's a lot of methods here, but the one I like using is by utilizing Glut to take the torch while not triggering the Bibberbangs. Next, we jump on the stone platforms and throw Balin's backpack to him so he can get out like usual, and then since this place will not explode anymore, I can just run and take the Noble Stock. There's multiple uses for the Noble Stock, but right now I'm going to talk about how to restore both Shadowheart and the Dark Urge's memory using this one that we just got. Speak to Shadowheart first and get to the part of the dialogue where you can either persuade or intimidate her into eating the mushroom. Before you do the checks though, swap to a different character leaving the convo, send the Noble Stock to your camp inventory, and then do the dialogue check again. After Shadowheart regains some of her memory, check your camp inventory and the Noble Stock should still be there, allowing your Dark Urge to use it for themselves. Number 75. Get your Underdark permabuffs. So there are 2 buffs you can get from the Underdark that'll last you throughout the whole game. The first one is Buwal's Benediction. Head to where the Kuatoa worshippers gather. Normally, you'd need to sacrifice a companion's, Harlings don't count, but here's how to get it without losing anyone. Trigger the conversation with one of your characters ungrouped from the rest of the party. Once triggered, pickpocket the Sickle of Buwal from Pooldrip and then continue with the conversation as usual. Become Buwal's Chosen and your whole party should receive the permabuff which grants advantage on attack rolls against bleeding opponents. The second is a skill that you can only get in this part of the game. Talk to Omeluum in the Myconid colony, complete his quest, and pass the dialogue checks when drinking his potion. If all goes well, you will unlock the Survival Instinct ability. Number 76, unlock the secrets of the Arcane Tower. Now, the Arcane Tower has a lot of secrets, but there's one particular item here that I really think is more powerful than the rest. Bypass the Arcane Tower's defenses by having one of your characters sneak, and then jump down these large mushrooms. Pick up a Susser Flower and put it in the generator, and this will allow the rest of your party to enter the tower safely. If you go up to the top, you'll meet Bernard, who has his own puzzle, but what I really want to highlight here is the chest of the Mundane right when you enter from the front door. You might think you're looking at just a bunch of junk items, but if you actually drag these out, they turn into a bunch of really cool stuff, and one of them is a set of boots that grants you the ability to infinitely cast Featherfall. Lastly, for Act 1, number 77, let's talk about Grimforge. There's actually 2 mithril ores that you can get here. One is the really obvious one right beside the stairs, and the other is hidden behind where you can fight the animated armors. Using the Featherfall boots, jump here to get a cool amulet with a quest attached, which we'll return to later, and then finally a little tip for the Grim boss fight. You can use the Grimforge hammer to absolutely trivialize this fight. To start, you want all of your party members positioned here and one positioned at the wheel. Crank the wheel to start the boss fight, then Misty Step or jump on top of where you place the mold. This will lead Grim to you, and ideally you want to position him with one foot on the lava and one foot where the hammer will hit. Shoot the lever to activate the hammer and then shoot the wheel to crank it again to keep him superheated so he's not immune to damage. Finishing this should get you one of the strongest items up to this point in the game, the adamantine gears. Number 78. Bonus tip: since this part is technically still considered Act 1 or Act 1.5, make sure to visit the Gith Creche for the Blood of Lathander. The safest way to get it is by collecting the 3 ceremonial weapons in the monastery and offering them to the stone tables near the Guardian of Faith to obtain the Dawnmaster crest. Then you infiltrate the Creche as usual up to where you fight the Inquisitor, and after the battle enter the door at the end. Pass the trial, and whether or not you have the crest, you'll get the legendary mace, the Blood of Lathander. Also, if you go through the Zaith'isk Tadpole extraction here, succeeding the throws will grant you the Awaken buff, letting you use bonus actions when casting illithid powers. Entering Act 2, most of the stuff here is pretty easy to encounter by just following the main quest, so I'm not going to show you everything, but I am going to talk about the stuff that I feel a lot of people easily miss. Number 79. Free the Moon Lantern Pixie. When you first arrive in the Shadow Curse lands, you aren't going to be able to travel freely because of the Shadow Curse. The easiest, most convenient way to deal with it is by entering through the mountain pass, encountering Karnas early, and taking his Moon Lantern. Free the Pixie inside and she will give you the Pixie's Blessing buff, which negates the effects of the curse, allowing for easy traversal in the whole area. Number 80. Avoid the fights against Storm family members by picking the right dialogue options. That's right, as long as you succeed in the dialogue checks, which can easily be done depending on your character stats, Malice Storm, Thisbald Storm, and Geringoth Storm will unalive themselves, which is not only hilarious, but also saves a lot of time since all of their fights include a lot of helpers. Also, if you give Geringoth all of your gold, you can get the incredibly rare single-use item called the Signed Trade Visa, which can turn your enemies into gold. Number 81. Visit Wraithwind Morgue. Easily missable, but it's just west of the House of Healing. The thing with the morgue is that this place has a lot of traps, so either bring a high dex character or a bunch of barrels to block the vents. Exploring this area will allow you to get rare items such as the Strange Tendril Amulet, which allows you to cast one of my favorite spells in the entire game, Evard's Black Tentacles. The morgue also contains the Eversight Ring, which grants immunity to the blinded condition, and then continuing even further is the Ominous Crevice, where you'll find the Protective Plate Heavy Armor, which gives you resistance to necrotic damage. Number 82. Get your Act 2 perma buffs. Upon reaching Moonrise Towers, add Astarion into your party and find Araj Oblodra. You have to convince Astarion to bite her, which he will be reluctant to do, but if you succeed, she will give you the Potion of Everlasting Vigor, which gives a permanent +2 strength boost. If you're a bard and followed Alfira's story, at the end of Act 2, talk to her at Moonrise Towers to gain an improved bardic inspiration charge. And lastly, inside the Mind Flayer colony, make sure to solve this Brain Connect puzzle and pick up the Waking Mind. You then insert this into the Mind Archive interface, and choosing to purge or consume the mind will give you the Githzerai Mind Barrier, which grants a permanent advantage on intelligence saving throws. Number 83. There are 2 summons that are easily missed in Act 2. One of them can be acquired by completing the quest from He Who Was, east of Last Light Inn, which will reward you with a glove to summon Quoth the Raven. For the second, add Gale to your party and access Balthazar's hidden room at Moonrise by interacting with the books and placing a heart on the altar. Have Gale interact with the Ritual Circle, combining a dead pixie with a broken moon lantern to create the Shadow Lantern, which will give you the summon spell for an incredibly powerful wraith. Alternatively, you can destroy the Ritual Circle to give Gale Mistress Benevolence, but that's not really as cool as a Shadow Wraith pet. Number 84. Get your free tadpoles from the Zentarim shipping crate. There's a barrel filled with illithid tadpoles near the prison entrance to Moonrise Towers. A lot of people tend to miss this, and even if they find it, a lot of people destroy the barrel to get to the tadpoles inside. You can actually just put the barrel in your inventory and it'll automatically give you 3 parasites instead of the usual 2. Number 85. Here's how to easily finish the trials in Shar's Gauntlets. For the soft step trial, which is the stealth trial, use a gaseous form spell on your lockpicker and head straight to the end. For the self-same trial, where you fight mirrors of your party, trigger their spawn while naked so they don't have armor or weapons during the combat. The last one sucks, so I really don't want to do it right, so for the Faith Leap trial, equip the Eversight Ring from the House of Healing Morgue, which grants you immunity to blindness, and then just Misty Step across the platforms. Entering Act 3, here's the stuff you might have missed in the Rivington Circus. First is Akabi the Genie. Use a stealth character, pickpocket the Genie ring, which will reveal that he's cheating with an invisible mage hand, and upon speaking to him again, He will transport you to a jungle area, and looting this place will give you the Band of Mystic Scoundrel and, more importantly, Nirulna, which is an amazing weapon for characters with throwing builds. Additionally, talk to Boney and Stony and get them to sculpt you a statue for 5,000 gold. Looking at this statue in your camp will give you the equivalent of a bless buff every time you look upon it. Number 87, get your Anointed in Splendor buff. This can be acquired by offering to the gods in the Stormshore Tabernacle. The amount seems to vary, but 5,000 gold should suffice for an additional +2 in saving throws, which should be very affordable to you at this point in the game if you've been hoarding your loot. Number 88, how to get the Monk's Hideous Laughter. So remember the sentient amulet we got back in Grimforge? The quest continues here in Rivington. Just do the quest and at the end take on the curse for yourself, which if you succeed these saving throws will grant you the equivalent of a Tasha's Hideous Laughter spell, which can be casted once per long rest. Number 89, unleash the full power of the Necromancy of Thay. Now for this you'd need to go through Ramazeth's Tower in the lower city. Just play through it normally and make sure to visit the Elminster section so you can read the Tharkeid Codex. After that, the Necromancy of Thay can be reread, and if you succeed the saving throw, you'll get the permanent ability to summon 4 ghouls via the Dance Macabre spell. Number 90, get the Unstable Blood passive. If you gave Araj your blood in Act 2, she can be found again in the lower city in a shop called the Crimson Draughts. Help her complete her potion, drink it, and you'll gain this passive which turns your blood flammable. Great for melee classes with high fire resistance because you basically turned into a walking fire wine barrel. Number 91, rescue Volo before confronting Orin. If rescued successfully, Volo will aid you in the fight against Bal's Chosen through the knowledge he gained from a guidebook, which will give you advantage against Slayer abilities. This is even better if you're playing a Dirge character, as it'll give you a pretty sweet new skill. Number 92, utilize the Mirror of Loss. In the final room of the House of Grief, there's a working Mirror of Loss which can potentially grant you a permanent +1 charisma and a +2 stat of your choice. This is incredibly hard and one of few instances where I approve of save scumming because of its randomness. First, succeed the religion check and offer a prayer. Without that, all of this falls apart. And basically what we're trying to do here is gazing at the mirror until we get the right dialogues, which seems to be based on a dice roll. When you get the dialogue about succeeding Stelmane, save because now you've gotten the +1 charisma. Gaze again until the mirror acknowledges you and you'll be able to sacrifice some of your memory for a +2 in a stat of your choice. The Stolen Vigor curse that comes with using the mirror can be cured by a simple remove curse spell, so there's a lot to gain here as long as you have the patience or luck for it. Number 93, you can become a vampire. If you romanced Astarion and ascended him, you get the option to be a vampire spawn yourself. Although from what I heard, Astarion seems to turn into a bit of a dickhead. Lastly, assemble the Hellfire Engine crossbow. One of the best crossbows in the entire game can be crafted at the Steel Watch Foundry. Look for the targeting module, a Steel Watch arm, and then the Watcher crossbow blueprint at the office in the foundry. Go to disable right here and you can make for yourself a crossbow that can not only cast lightning arrow, but also pull people towards you alongside some pretty good damage. Moving on to the last section, these advanced tips are basically straight up cheese and I would not recommend doing these on a first playthrough just because it'll ruin your sense of progression. Number 95, how to get the Helldusk armor in Act 1. This legendary heavy armor can be acquired early, however you are going to need somebody with a silent spell and usually that's Shadowheart at level 3. Get the Parasite from Nettie's desk to ensure Raphael appearing will trigger, and then head outside the grove towards the broken bridge with an ungrouped party so only one of you will get dragged into the conversation. Once Raphael appears, hit him with an arrow to get him to disappear, and from here you can either proceed as usual or head straight to the mountain pass and trigger him appearing at your camp. Cast Silence, hit him until he's dead, which might take a while, and then loot the armor. If you want to keep him alive, just knock him out and his cutscenes will trigger as usual, however he will be visibly bruised. Number 96, how to get the Astral Silver Sword in Act 1. Literally the best Gith weapon in the game can be acquired pretty easily. Head to the mountain pass again and make sure to bring a Beastmaster Ranger with you who can summon a bear. Ungroup, walk towards the Githyankies with the summoned bear to not trigger cutscenes or any combat, and then hit Kithrak Voss with Honeyed Paws, which has a decently high chance of making him drop his weapon. Number 97, get extreme discounts with vendors. This is mainly for Honor or Tactician mode where prices are steep, but there's a method to score huge discounts using a high charisma character, usually your Tav. The way it works is that vendors with a high attitude towards you give better prices, both when selling and buying, and the easiest way to boost their attitude is by giving them gold, but the cost scales with your level. To minimize this, first respec to level 1 with withers. Afterwards, just 400 gold should be enough to max their attitude and buy anything for cheap. If you're playing a rogue or an evil character though, this next one might be more up your alley. Number 98, the infinite pickpocket trick. Talk to your victim, the vendor you'd like to borrow from, and then when you're in conversation, switch to a different character. Cast hold person on them and watch as the spell timer doesn't go down because time is not passing for them as they're still in conversation with one of our characters. Pickpocket whatever you need because even when you fail, it doesn't matter. They can't do anything about it. End the conversation once you're done and get out of there. Number 99. Learn Advanced Barrelmancy. This is an evolution of the classic backpack nuke cheese, except this time we're not throwing bombs, we're throwing barrels. All you have to do is have a backpack opened in your inventory while the camp inventory is open at the same time. Drag the bombs into the backpack and this will allow you to exceed your carry limit. Now drop the backpack and throw it at the target using the spell Telekinesis, and that should land your backpack exactly where you want it to be alongside everything contained inside. Number 100. How to skip the whole gauntlet of Shar. All you need here is the Featherfall boots we got from the Arcane Tower, and if you follow this exact route and jump down these spots, you can speedrun the Gauntlet of Shar and finish up Act 2 very quickly. Finally, tip number 101. The Karmic Dice setting. This setting basically gives you a safety net to avoid consecutive bad rolls, so yeah, surprise surprise, you weren't getting true random results if you had it on. If you want the full random dice experience, turn it off and add just that little bit of spice to your playthrough. Also, if you're playing on higher difficulties, keep in mind that Karmic Dice affects enemy rolls too. So whatever benefit you get from avoiding bad streaks, they get as well, which can be brutal when it lets them land hits after missing your high AC character. That's it, I'm Tard. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, bye bye.